Greetings. This is March 2nd, 2016, and this is the beginning of a new chapter in my understanding of the Gebusi and also for the Gebusi themselves. At the very end of the fourth edition of the Gebusi book, I mentioned that there had been a rain shortage and the water levels in the rivers had dried up as of mid-2015, and the large mine that supplies a large percentage of the GDP for the country of Papua New Guinea as a whole was closed because the barges couldn't get up the river to transport the iron ore back down. Well, since then, the situation has gotten a lot worse. A major El Nino has developed in Papua New Guinea, as also afflicts other parts of the South Pacific, and there's been a huge drought. And the drought has had different impacts in different parts of the country, but especially in rural areas such as the nomad area where Gebusi are located, where there are no roads to anywhere, so it's very hard to get any supplies in. And the area is presently under Category 5 food shortage, which is the highest food shortage rating by the investigations that have been made. And so it's possible that some of my Gebusi friends and others are starving, actually, in the rainforest. And it's very hard to get information about this, but it raises many issues which are important to front load. My own plan has been to go back to the Gebusi, and I've been very fortunate to get funding from the Harry Frank Guggenheim Foundation to do that this summer. And also I'll be joined with a wonderful young researcher from France, Dr. Anne-Sylvie Malbranc, and the two of us will be going together, planning to be there for most of May and all of June in 2016, this coming summer. Now, the situation with the Gebusi and their rainfall shortage and the drought, as well as the general area, bears some comments. And it's important to realize the uncertainty of the situation, both the uncertainty for Gebusi and also the uncertainty for me. Every time I go back to Gebusi, there's other uncertainties, and this is certainly a very large one. The situation on the ground is difficult to know because no one really has been to the Gebusi area themselves. There have been triangulating reports from other areas that would suggest that the situation has been relatively dire among Gebusi for lack of rain, gardens drying up, and even inability to process the sago palms because they require water for the starch to be leached. Now, exactly what's going on, there are different scenarios, and I'm really not sure which is taking place, but they have a big impact, both on the Gebusi and my relationship with them, and also the ability and the fate of our attempts to go back to visit with them this coming May and June. On the one hand, it's possible that the Gebusi are really in very bad shape. It's possible that there are, as one report suggested from different parts of the country that have been most adversely affected, that even people in their 20s and 30s, in the heart of their normal life cycle, have been succumbing to famine and dying, possibly. On the other hand, the Gebusi are very resilient. When I was with them in 1998, after they also suffered a major drought just after that had happened, they recovered from that quite well. At that point, they had gotten relief supplies from the Australian aid wing of the Australian government that really helped them pull through. New Guinea, I gather, has rather cut its ties with Australian aid, and Australian aid is not coming in, which is really unfortunate. But there is some other food aid. The exact amount of it and where it's going is hard to determine at this particular point. But Gebusi are very resourceful, and if they're able to disperse further into the rainforest to the south, it's possible that through a combination of hunting and fishing and sago gathering, that they might be able to eke out okay. It's also possible that they are kind of moderately stressed, but not too stressed, or it's possible that many of them are really emaciated and under famine conditions. Now, the interaction between drought and lack of food resources with things like malaria and with things like insect infestations and other kinds of diseases are very important. So malaria in combination with poor health from lack of nutrition could be quite a large issue. So it's possible in some ways that in terms of health that Gebusi are cycling back a little bit to the way they were when I first studied them in the 1980s, when their subsistence had not really changed to take advantage of root crops and other things, with a more settled lifestyle that they've been able to develop, with more reliance on the canoes and on the rivers, because the settlements are more stable. They don't fear warfare the way they did, so that their ability to be more stable residentially increased their ability to use rivers, canoes, and also their subsistence regime generally. But when I first worked with them, their health was much poorer, their nutrition was poorer, and they were much greater risk of dying at different ages throughout the life cycle because of the interaction of poor nutrition with malaria and other diseases. And so it's quite possible that Gebusi have temporarily cycled back into that older pattern in terms of their health and livelihood. But I don't know. I don't know if if the Gebusi are still residentially aggregated around Gasumi Corners in the northern part of their territory, or the northern Gebusi aggregated there, or whether they're more dispersed in the bush. I don't know how much relief supplies that they've been able to get and where that they've come in from by air. I don't know the relationship of their subsistence activities and also malaria. There have been, ironically, deluges of rain recently, which one would think is a very good thing. And it could be in the long run, but the new gardens apparently can sometimes be washed out by torrential rain. And it can also lead to large infestations of insects, which have been waiting to breed while the weather's dry and then come to full force when the first rains come. So it's possible, it's very common after a drought that the first crops are no good or very compromised even after the rain starts to fall. At the same time that health is poor, that malaria, mosquito populations may be breeding, and diseases of other kinds may be festering. So particularly those who are older in age and those who are below age 5 or 4 are at greatest risk of succumbing. So in my case, it's a sad reality to not know whether some of my older friends, Kilisui, Masomiai, Uok, women such as Moose, Nalep, Kuni, even Dohain and others, Tabwai, whether they are very stressed physically or maybe even passed away. So have a quite a lot of investment emotionally and hoping that they're okay, and desire to get back as soon as I can. And going back also has its challenges. If the food situation is so dire, then coming in as one person, even two of us with a plane load, or maybe if we could scrape together the money, 2 plane loads of goods, these are small planes, there's not a lot of food. It actually could cause stress to have many people seeing a plane land, and from many areas, not just Gebusi, wanting food and not being enough. It could be a very difficult situation, and people could be expending valuable energy even trying to get to a place where I was, what they thought there would be food, but then there wasn't any. Now that's, it may not be that way. It's possible that they will have gotten enough food, or that the rains have come and that situations will have really improved by May. Our present plan is to get there around May 16th to 18th, depending on weather, after all the other protocols and passages are done, to Papua New Guinea through the capital, through the town of Kiunga, and so on. So how this is going to affect our trip is very much in the balance. And I want to try to get back as absolutely soon as I can, and have been in contact with some of the world experts who have been studying the drought in Papua New Guinea. And most of them seem to think that by May, the situation will have stabilized enough that it wouldn't be dangerous either for me or for the Gebusi to actually go back and try to be with them. And possibly it would be a positive kind of psychologically and otherwise a positive thing that outsiders are now in contact with them again, that there could be at least a little bit of food that could be brought in to help them, and it certainly could document their plight, and if more food was needed, then you could try to advertise and get things, relief efforts started in a larger way. There are relief efforts. There's a North Fly relief effort that I've posted the link to on my website for anyone that wants to make donations to that, and we'll certainly be doing whatever we can. Now, where we're going to be able to get into Gebusi land from is also an interesting and important question, because on the one hand, the Nomad airstrip has been closed, and if we have to land further afield in the tribal group to the north, the Samo, it seems that many of the groups are getting more possessive about resources because of the drought, and so whether we would be able to land and then get our supplies carried to the Gebusi without feeling obliged or even pressured or forced to give them up among the Samo would be an issue. I don't want to maybe this isn't going to be the case. There's some chance we might even be able to land at Nomad station. It appears that there have been some flights in the last year or two that have gotten into Nomad, which would be wonderful. There's another station further to the south, in the south part of Gebusi territory, that's a pretty long walk that we could get to. So the question of whether the planes are flying, where we would go in, and so on is a major issue. So the uncertainties of this question at present bring together several really important strands of work among Gebusi that are both applied and engaged and also theoretical and scholarly in nature. The nature of subsistence practices and their change over time, what aspects of subsistence can be adapted under stressful conditions, what are the politics of drought relief, why it is that Gebusi and other areas, people in the Nomad area, which is one of the isolates of the whole country, which is in one of the worst food stress situations. There's only like one or two other parts of the whole country that have this degree of food stress. Why it is that given government protocols and difficulties that the relief effort has been so slow and so paltry in this particular area, and why that there's so little communication. It's very hard to get information back and forth there. All these things kind of resonate together. So there's a politics of agency, of NGOs and of the government itself, the climate changes themselves, the deluge of recent rains, which we don't know which will hold or not, could very well be a function of global warming, both the global warming that is facilitating a very extreme El Nino drought, but also after the drought, there's sometimes a rebound effect of the La Nina, where there's more rain. And so you go from one extreme to the other extreme very quickly. And the amplitude or the scale of climate changes is also something that's a product of global warming, sometimes called global weirding, or the increase of climate variability, extremes of various kinds, a little bit like the global gyroscope of weather and climate, is wobbling a little bit, so you get different fluctuations. So it's possible that the intensity of the El Nino drought, and possibly the intensity of what might be a La Nina very, very rainy period when we get there or slightly thereafter, could be part of the mix that ties in with global warming issues, even in the heart of the New Guinea rainforest. So there's many different issues involved. And then the final one is what is happening to the levels of social stress and conflict among Gebusi. The Guggenheim Foundation, which is very appreciatively, from our perspective, funding our research, our project is to look at why and how it has been that the Gebusi have maintained such a low rate of violence and what seems to be a zero rate of homicide since the late 1980s, whereas in the earlier periods it was enormously high. So what means of dealing with conflict by looking at the marriages and the deaths and the other stress points in their society and getting accounts of that to the present to chart more specifically how and why Gebusi have been able to maintain a low rate of conflict and violence despite having one of the highest ever documented in the ethnographic record during the pre-colonial and early colonial period, as I found in my earlier work. And so this is the project that the Guggenheim Foundation has funded us to study, and it interacts directly with this drought situation because in some parts of Papua New Guinea, the stress levels have increased with drought and famine, and even witches or sorcerers are accused or even tortured or killed a little bit more frequently from some secondhand accounts from other areas. We don't know if that's happening among the Gebusi or not. My guess and my hope is that it has not happened. And if it has not happened, then the question is, how have Gebusi been able to deal with the tensions and the potential irritations and conflict that result from severe food stress? And what mechanisms of their own have they been able to use to keep that conflict under manageable control, which is a really crucial and important issue itself. So there are various issues that deal with conflict management, social organization, politics within Gebusi, subsistence activities, and of course our own subject position as anthropologists trying to get to Gebusi, and the way that we negotiate with the charter companies flying us in, other folks who may be involved in relief efforts and so on, could be part of the mix. So at present, it's a very for me, a very poignant and powerful kind of beginning of a new chapter. I so desperately hope that my Gebusi friends are okay. I mean, especially people that I know so dearly for many years. And those, even like Sayo and Didika, who are now in their 30s, are getting to be kind of senior men in the Gebusi life cycle. And I hope that they're okay and that their children are okay as well. So a lot is in the balance, and it's an interesting story of investigation and certainly surprise. So I'm hoping that things will go well, and thought I would take this opportunity to record a first installment for what is likely to be, and is almost certain to be, a new and fairly poignant, if not dramatic, story of re-engaging with the Gebusi once again. So thanks very much for your attention, and I will keep you posted again. So long for now.